Welcome to Autism Daily, everybody. Today we're going to answer the question, how do I know my child has sensory overload during the holidays or outings? It is currently holiday season and there's lots of long weekends and there's lots of entertainment happening. So parents tend to be a little bit more relaxed. There's socializing happening, maybe not to the extent pre-COVID, but it is there. I often get a question from parents relating to how do I know that, this meltdown is coming? How do I know that my child is in distress? So it's important for you to know as the parent that there are warning signs. There are absolutely warning signs that a child may be going into some form of sensory overload. I say this in every single one of these sessions I have with you, everyone is going to be different. Every child is different. Every child that is sensitive to noise is sensitive to different noises. So this is a list of kind of telltale signs that there may be something busy happening that is causing distress. But you need to always look at your child's normal, and you need to look at that change that happens, because we know what our children can and can't cope with. So in the first point, when I speak about when your child's mood seems irritable for no apparent reason, this is a big one. Maddie is absolutely, she's a happy child. She giggles and she laughs and she's happy and she hums and she does her thing. But Maddie doesn't really get distressed until she does. Then it's irritability. Now, I know down to a second when that happens. And I know when it's because, maybe she's not getting her way and it's kind of a silent tantrum. I've learned to read when that irritability has maybe got to do with because, a communication challenge. But I also know when that irritability is something else. And that something else is usually when we as parents need to start worrying that it may be a sensory overload, particularly if you are in a social situation, if you are in a shopping center, if you are in a public place, and all of a sudden the child's mood changes, or the child's mood is different to what they normally would be. The second one is a restlessness. The child seeming very uncomfortable during a time where usually they would have no problems. So let's say, for argument's sake, in my instance, when we drive, and particularly when we drive long distance, we can be driving down to Kruger and it's a 5-hour journey. And for 5 hours, my child is absolutely happy in the car. The minute we turn into the smaller towns and hubby's not driving 120 anymore, we kind of start slowing down and stopping at robots, I see my daughter becoming uncomfortable. I see she becomes restless. I see the irritability starting. And that is when I realize that maybe her sensory input that she's been receiving has come to a very quick and very abrupt halt. And I now need to help her before she becomes too distressed. That's what I mean by, something all of a sudden changing. So usually if your child is on a playground and, is used to going to Piccolinos and used to being at the Spur playground, and today there is a problem. So that thing that is out of the ordinary, that is going to be one of the warning signs. A lack of focus, a lack of attention is another very big telltale sign. But, here you've got to, again, know what the child's normal level of focus or attention would be in order for you to judge whether the behavior is different or not. Anything and everything out of the ordinary is going to be a warning sign. Restlessness, all of that is just, it's got to be different to what you know as the parent is normal. If you sense that your child's very wound up, like you can just see, maybe they're biting, maybe they're pulling at their clothes, maybe they're biting their hand. Maddie's going to always bite something. She's going to bite her iPad cover, or she's going to bite the tail of Simba or something like that. And if it's more so than what she usually would, then we know that there is a definite sensory overload. Anxiety attacks. tears, frustration for absolutely no apparent reason. These are all very big telltale signs of a sensory overload. Just remember, guys, everything is outside of the norm. So Maddie is sensitive to clothes. She is. She only wears t-shirting. She doesn't like cottons on her body. But the day t-shirting starts irritating her and she starts pulling at it and she wants it off because, maybe there's a picture on it she doesn't like, or maybe it's too red or too orange or whatever the case may be. Those are the days that we need to understand that it may be a sensory overload. And it may not even be caused by the t-shirt. It may be caused by the light. It may be caused by somebody cutting down a tree, by a dog barking. It may be in a public place screaming children. All of those things can be. Sensory also goes hand in hand with, where the child is, the time of day. If they're tired, they tend to be more sensory sensitive. So you need to first and foremost know your child, know their normal behavior, know their normal level of irritability, their normal level of comfort, understand where they are normally anxious and, where things become a little bit too intense, and understand things like, okay, so my child doesn't really like walking on grass, but now today my child doesn't even want to really stand on grass. There's a very, very, very clear distinction between somebody not liking it but doing it and somebody that outright is now going into a bit of a panic because they're being asked to do it. I promise you that there is always a warning sign with our children. It is important for families to understand the subtleties of what causes or contributes to the sensory overload. And that, in fact, your child's most loved activity over a holiday or at home could actually end up being the actual cause of it. We think that, our children love the trampoline, so there's no ways that my child is going to become sensory overloaded if they get to jump, or maybe they love swimming. Maybe you're on a beach holiday now over the Easter long weekend, and you can't understand why now all of a sudden your child is overly irritable and overly sensitive to everything, when all of a sudden now the child is gaining access 3 and 4 hours a day to water. So just understand that too much of a good thing is also not always a good thing. Let's just look at a few. Number one, try to identify the pattern of behavior your child is showing. So that little behavior diary, we are going to have a little Autism Daily chat about that later on in the month. The behavior diary, very, very important. Kind of look at, is there a trend? Is the irritability starting every time after, you've come back from the beach, or you've come back from the pool, or maybe when you're in a particular place. Very importantly, realizing that swimming for 2 hours or jumping on a trampoline for 30 minutes can be as big a trigger as what a shopping mall is going to be, because the child's senses become overly stimulated during those. And what should be calming actually is having totally the opposite effect. It's important for you to note that every situation will be different, and how much sensory input it takes for your child to reach his or her threshold is going to be determined by hunger, by sleep, by the mood that the child was in, by other factors. So if we're in a new place and the child's already feeling a little bit anxious because they're not coping well with change, chances are they're going to be a lot quicker to become irritable from a sensory perspective. So if they've had a bad night's sleep, you're going to know that the lawnmower is going to irritate or frustrate them more than what it normally would. Most importantly, moms and dads, a meltdown, that time where your child just goes into that distress moment. Meltdowns are purely reactions to feelings. In most cases, your child is just overstimulated. This isn't because your child is naughty. This isn't because they're being a brat, or because they even have control over it. It is something that happens. Please, guys, log on to our chat later on this month. Stay tuned, subscribe, so that you can learn how to identify the difference between the autism meltdown and when it is that your child is naughty. Because the truth is, when your child does go into that distress moment of meltdown, it is purely a reaction towards feelings. Very importantly for you to take into consideration that sensory meltdowns and behavior are just it's just a response, to something that's busy happening, that it's totally uncontrollable, and that everything that we do in life with our children in moderation is going to be a good thing. But anything that we do too much of is just going to be too much. Having people over and, usually you're in home and you've got just you and dad and maybe the siblings, maybe, your son or your daughter is only used to 2 or 3 other people being present at any given stage. That child's not going to react well to 15 people coming over for lunch. The child's not going to react well if they get unlimited access to sea sand. Yes, they love sand. They love playing with sand. They love the sensory element of it, and it's great for them. But being on the beach for 5 hours is going to actually have the totally opposite reaction. It is not always easy to navigate these things, but you don't have to do them alone. We're here for you. For more information, feel free to log on to our website, and we'll see you soon at our next Autism Daily Chat. Thank you for joining us.